Welcome to Two Therapists Talking. The hope for this podcast is to talk about important issues related to couples and individuals who are struggling in their lives with many different issues. I'm David Thompson, a marriage and family therapist.
And I'm Sherie Christensen, marriage and family therapist. Please join us as we explore these issues together, and we hope you will learn and be enlightened along the way. Come find us at twotherapisttalking.com. If you like what you're hearing, please get on and rate us and subscribe to the podcast.
Hi, and welcome back to Two Therapists Talking. I'm David.
And I'm Sherie.
Today we are talking about a subject that I'm surprised we haven't done before. And I probably say
I
that
feel like
every
we
time.
say that a lot.
I know, as I say it. But it's a super important one for me. I see this constantly. And I think I've probably said this before too, but it feels often as a therapist like we're providing information. What we can't provide is the drive or the vision or the why for our clients. And so often I feel like we're giving a lot of good tools and they're not being implemented or utilized. And we have to shift gears a bit and go into why or what they want and how bad do they really want it? Because they say they want whatever. Right. But when push comes to shove, there's not a lot of behavior or follow-up. And so we have to really uncover the why.
Yep.
Or the stumbling blocks and different things. But
yeah, where are the stuck spots? What's going on?
So motivation.
Yay.
What about motivation? What is motivation?
It's the drive to accomplish, to do the task, right? But there's so many pieces that go into that.
Yeah.
I mean, just even, just even thinking from a like neurodivergent perspective, right? Like you have someone with ADHD, they're going to really struggle with motivation because they don't have enough dopamine in their brain to provide that, right? So it's kind of a fascinating thing that has so many different parts to it that are really critically important.
Yeah.
Because it's necessary, right? Like we can't do anything
without
we can't get anywhere in life. And I feel like it's become a lot harder for people to be motivated lately.
Yeah. Definitely.
Like we're trending downward.
Yeah. Well, we're probably trending downward on most things maybe, right? But
hopefully not most things.
Only the good ones. But no, I want to talk about this today. This is a good one. And I think there's some things in here that may be helpful.
Yeah.
And especially maybe with this podcast, after each point, I think we'll have a question that you can ask yourself. Mm-hmm. And you can pause the podcast and ponder and reflect and write some things down. And hopefully this will be helpful. But it's a subject that I constantly deal with. In fact, I might say my job description, if somebody were to ask me, and I can't say therapist, would be...
motivator?
Yeah, like a cheerleader, a motivator. Rah, rah, go get him. You can do this. You've got what it takes. Let's go. That's what a lot of therapy feels like.
Yeah. Yeah. And then kind of what you were saying, like figuring out, like, okay, you can't quite get there. So what's in the way?
Right. Yep.
And problem
solver.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of things are hard. They're not feeling great. And I don't want them leaving the office that way. I feel a tremendous sense of inadequacy if you leave the office feeling not motivated.
Yeah, or less motivated than when you came in.
Which would be terrible for
really
a lot of
bad.
times, someone coming in. So motivation.
Yeah.
Some good things to know about motivation, all right? It's tricky because it's strengthened most following action rather than preceding it.
Right.
What does that mean?
Well, I can even just use an example from like one of the things, the tips and tools that we work with ADHD clients, right, is like you just have to get over that initial hump of something.
Right.
And then it's like you can do it. So if you're struggling, it's, I can't seem to get out to go to the gym. Okay, then the only thing that you just have to convince your brain, like tell your brain, the only thing I have to do is put my clothes on and go outside with my keys in my hand. And that's it. Like, I don't have to do anything else. I can walk back in the house after that. But like, once you get to that point, then you're like, oh, okay, well, I could do the thing. Or
Right.
with a big list of things that you would do, something that we do with ADHD is like, okay, look at that list and like, what's the one thing you can do?
Yeah.
Or what's like the smallest part of one thing that you can do? And when you do that one little thing, like all of a sudden I've got the motivation, the drive, the capacity to keep doing.
It really adds to it. Yeah.
Yes, it's a follow-up thing.
Yep.
And then you check that one thing off and you're like, oh, I could totally do this whole list. Whereas it felt completely incapacitating before.
Yeah.
And that's the motivation. It's following doing the activity rather than preceding the activity.
Probably if we make any point at all in this and the following episode about motivation, it would be that right there. It grows as you go.
Yes.
And so if you don't have a lot to start, or if you feel like you do, just know you have to act, you have to move, and
Yes.
it will get better.
Yes.
That's why if you don't do anything, not only is it much harder, but in time it'll probably just go away and you'll move on to something else. And which is sad because these are good things usually that you want to try to do and goals that you have. So
Yep. You got to get out and do something. You got to get started on something. And then it can start the ball rolling, that snowball effect.
definitely. In fact, what do we know about maybe the best way to stay motivated from research?
I think probably putting things into place, right?
Right.
That are going to keep you in that space. So like your schedule, your
Yes.
patterns of how you're
Yes.
doing things. Because
Creating those.
if it's just ingrained and this is just what I do, then even when it's hard, A, you're still doing it. But B, you've now done the one thing and now you've got a little bit of motivation to get you through the next thing and the
Right.
next thing and the next thing.
Exactly. So believe it or not, we've talked about this too, I think. The best ways to have systems and habits like Sherry's talking about that support the thing. Mm-hmm. And this comes from James Clear, Atomic Habits. I love this quote. He said, "We don't rise to the level of our goals, whatever that is. We fall to the level of our systems."
Ooh,
It
so
doesn't
good.
matter what you want. What matters is what you
your
have
system
in
is
place.
in place.
Yeah. And so awesome quote. Very
And-
inspirational.
Yeah, and I just feel like my brain even hearing that is just rippling out into all these different places in your life that could apply to.
Right.
Not
Yep.
just addiction or business or, personal goals. I mean, it just
Everything.
everything.
Yep.
And where and what are your systems within that structure?
Yep. So remember that quote. It's awesome. I use it on my kids all the time, much to their chagrin.
Yes.
So
Say it one more time for everybody
one more time.
listening.
We don't rise to the level of our goals. We fall to the level of our systems.
Yes.
No matter what you want to do, you will default to whatever system is in place, which most of the time is no system.
Yes.
And we wonder why we're not achieving the things because we have a spike in motivation and we do one thing or do the thing once, but we don't create a system, no habits, no patterns, and we crash and burn
Yeah.
when motivation drops a little bit. So, systems.
Systems and habits. So critical. And again, I think my brain is going to go a lot to this other concept of like this ADHD space, right? Because
Which is a great thing to talk about because I think a lot of people can relate to that or have that in some degree. So please share
Yeah.
as much that comes.
yeah, for sure. And again, with those systems, If you're struggling, if you have ADHD and you're struggling with systems, know that that's correct, because it is much harder for an ADHD brain to come up with systems. But you've got to like stick with it, and you got to do all these different, you got to have your alarms, you've got to have your, you know, different things that are your reminders that are going to pop up at these different times. But certainly, again, even though an ADHD person is going to be way more fluid with things, they're going to be way more successful if they can get those systems and habits and patterns in place.
Yeah.
So,
maybe more creativity.
yes.
But they would probably respond maybe even better.
100% can respond so much better if they've got the systems in place for all of the things, and then they've got space for that creativity to come out and flourish.
Awesome.
So we want structured flexibility, but that structure is absolutely critical for any type of functional success for ADHD.
Yeah. Which leads us into our first,
Woo-hoo!
number one. Okay. Set clear, achievable goals. Well, of course, you have to have an idea of what you want to do, that you're motivated to do. You probably heard of SMART goals. I think everybody has: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound. That's the acronym for SMART.
Yeah.
And the idea, of course, is you're breaking big goals into tiny steps to avoid feeling overwhelmed. So this is
100%.
what Sherry's talking about. Just get out the door.
Yes.
Just
do that first tiniest little thing. Just
thing.
open the window on your computer.
Right.
Right?
And even if that means that's all you do for a little while, okay. Time moves forward, and so you're doing something.
Yes. Yes. So I think we should go through each of those in the acronym and just like give it a little bit of like explanation. So specific, obviously you can't have nebulous goals.
Not very
I want to get
achievable.
in shape.
Yeah.
Right? Like, what does that mean? If you don't have something very specific, you're going to be in trouble, because
Actually, that's a really good example, huh?
yeah.
Because in shape
In
can
shape.
be
What does that
BMI,
mean?
it can be weight, it can be flexibility, it can be strength.
Yeah.
It can be,
It can be like endurance.
yeah.
Yeah. It can be your pant size.
Heart rate, all kinds of things.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what is it? The specific goal, and then it has to be measurable. Again, just like, I want to get in shape. Okay, well,
I'll feel better.
Yeah. So what does that then look like if you've decided, okay, it means endurance?
Yeah.
Okay, so what are you measuring then? And what specific sport are you measuring in, right?
Yeah.
Like, I can sit on a bike and I can ride for hours and hours without a problem. But it's really different than putting me in the water to swim or, putting me on the treadmill. Like, endurance is way different between the three. So what specifically, like, what are you going to measure? And is that maybe related to your heart rate, or like I can do a physical exercise
Because that helps
for
if
X
we
amount
can
of time.
tie it to something a little more concrete.
Yep. So it has to be able to be measured. Or if it's like, I want to lose weight because it's a size thing, then like, what specific, like, are we doing a pant size? Are we measuring your biceps and your thighs? Like, what are you doing? It's got to be measurable and then achievable.
Yeah.
Right? So
Can't be too crazy or you might get discouraged. You're dropping your pant size this much in this amount of time.
yeah, 10 pant sizes in a year, whatever. Like, that might be a little like, okay, wait a minute. You got to reset your set point every 10 pounds. So that's going to take a little extra, just thinking through all of those parts, right? Has to be achievable. And you know what? Like, you may have a big stretch goal way out there, but maybe set an achievable goal, like shorter term, because that's going to help you in that space of staying motivated. Instead of like, okay, here's my 5-year goal, and I've got to stay motivated that whole time. Like, okay, what's, again, that first part of that goal, and doing a smaller chunk of that. Like, I'm going to do 10 pounds this, year. I'm going to do 10 pounds next year, whatever it is that you're doing.
Right. they also need to be relevant. So relevant to the goal, not something, and this one, it makes the SMART acronym work well, is really maybe why it's in there, relevant. But it needs to be specific, measurable, achievable to whatever goal you have, and that would make it relevant.
Right.
And I really honestly can't think of a much better example than that.
Yeah.
Relevant. Not about something else, but about the goal that you set that you're trying to
About
achieve.
what you're actually trying to achieve. Yep. And time bound.
Time bound.
You can't just...
It can't be open-ended.
Yep. Because then, again, if you think about trying to be motivated to hit that, right? Like forcing functions really help us out. When we've got like, here is the deadline, here is the thing,
Yeah.
as any ADHD person can tell you, they're writing all of their papers, they're doing all of their things like the very last second, because at that point they know, their brain knows, I'm in exactly the right place, exactly the right time, doing exactly what I should be doing here. Like, I have to get this thing done, right? So time bound is super important. Those forcing functions are incredibly useful for any of us when we're talking about being motivated.
Yep. So here's the question then for this first goal. What is your goal? So remember to make it, and I'm adding this part because I think sometimes we make it harder on ourselves by not doing this. Make your goal a positive, not a negative. Sometimes the goal is like sobriety.
Yeah.
Which, like, of course,
Stop
that's a
doing
good
this.
goal, but it's a stop doing a thing.
Yeah.
It's easier to say the goal is being reframed to living in recovery, where it's, a value, it's a positive that feels good versus like just to not do a thing. And then you're still focused on that thing.
Right.
Which makes it hard.
Right. Yeah. Or being more patient instead of not being angry or not getting angry. Then you're like, and then a lot of it ends up being more of a white knuckling thing than an actual goal that you're shifting and changing and achieving.
Yep.
Okay. So our second strategy to help with motivation is connecting to your why.
Why?
So why is this important?
Well, if you don't have a really solid, strong why, you will burn out for sure. And it'll be pretty unclear anyway. Yeah. I think, if you're going to set a SMART goal, but the why isn't very good, or it's not your why, it's somebody else's why.
Yes, that's a really good point.
Will burn out. So it's got to be significant to you. It's got to be important enough. And really, it's got to be yours. At least your version of it. It may be a good goal for lots of people, but you've got to take it and make it yours and personalize it. And otherwise, again, you just will lose interest, which is the opposite. And remember, we're building systems. We're going to talk more about that, but you're going to lose interest on some level anyway. And if the why is not really strong, you're going to be in big trouble. Because motivation is fickle and it comes and goes. And that's with a strong why. So with like a weak why, you're in big trouble.
Yeah. You're like, where's the Oreos?
It's done. It's finished.
That's why we don't make it past January.
It's like
sometimes
me, you got a camera in my house. It's like, I'm going to do so good. And then I come home and eat dinner and watch Beat Bobby Flay. And as soon as I'm done, I'm like, my body says, sugar, sugar, sugar. I think there's Oreos actually in the cupboard. And
yes.
Okay. What's my why? Slow down. Why am I doing this?
Yeah. Why am I choosing this? Yes. And that's something that you come back to so often, right? When you don't want to, you can come back to that why.
Right.
Again and again and again.
You'll need to. Definitely.
To come back to the why. And it'll just be really important. So our question with this strategy then is, what is your why?
Your why.
Make sure it's your why. Make sure it's very personal to you. It's very meaningful. That there's a lot of weight and power behind it.
And really take your time to ponder and reflect all of this. Because again, the more peace you have around these things, the more likely there's going to be follow through and developing habits and patterns and systems and routines. And so take your time on this.
Yeah, absolutely.
The third one is to start small and take action. So here's that action again, which is so important to motivation. Action breeds motivation. Remember, you can have motivation to start, but it's doing that really strengthens it. So don't wait to just feel motivated. Do small, manageable tasks, and the motivation will build. It'll follow.
Yes. And that's, we were talking about that with the first one. Like, you may have a bigger size goal, but then how can you break it down? How can you make the tiny little things and then pat yourself on the back, check it off a list? All of those things are going to help a lot in that process.
Right.
And even if it is like, hey, I'm just going to open the window on my computer every day, that is progress. It's moving forward.
Yep.
And you may have some days that you open that window and then you're like, yeah, I could totally do. Now I can pull up and I can pull up the email and I can do the thing and I can set that goal. And then other days you might pull that window up and go, okay, I pulled up the window, Because
chances are really good if you start, you may continue.
Yes. You don't have to. So I tell clients that you don't have to go to the gym once you're standing outside on the porch with your keys. You can make a choice after that.
Yeah.
But it's that push to get through. And 95% of the time,
right,
you're going to the gym.
Right.
Probably more than that, actually. But it's all of those small, manageable tasks. And every time you do that, you're literally giving your brain dopamine to be motivated to do the next little thing and the next little thing. And if there's something that you really need to do and you can break it down into that manageable, you can say, okay, I've done this tiny little thing. Maybe this whole rest of it feels really unmanageable, but what's the next one thing I could do?
Right.
And so if you can keep even just doing that next tiny little action, like don't worry about all that stuff. Then you can start rolling that forward.
Trust that action will breed motivation.
Yes.
It will build it. Your job is just to be consistent with that action, even if it starts small, that's okay.
Yes. Yeah. So like, even again, if you're struggling with exercise, get out on the porch, or maybe you just do 5 minutes. Like, I don't even have to go. I'm not even putting on workout clothes. I'm not going to the gym. I'm just going to do jumping jacks or sit-ups or push-ups in my living room, or I don't even want to leave my bedroom. I can do it on the floor in my bedroom. 5 minutes.
Yep.
And every time that you're doing that, you are building that momentum.
Right. So what's the question?
What actions are you willing to take? Yep. And this is like, what are you willing to, like, I'm going to do this thing.
And I can commit because I'm going to make it small enough that it doesn't feel overwhelming and impossible.
Yep. And again, when we're talking about, motivation is good for all the things, all the places, and just thinking about some of these places that you can plug it in that you may not be thinking of. If you're struggling with depression, you're struggling with some of these things, I know that if I go exercise, if I walk, that's going to help my brain. I know if I can get up and shower, that's going to help, my brain. And that's one of the strategies that we do with clients in session is like the tiny little things.
Right.
That can then build and then improve mood, because again, dopamine's one of the chemicals in our brain that help with depression, right? Like, that's an aspect of depressive symptoms. And so if we can get that going, just do that one little thing, then you can start getting enough motivation, hopefully, to get outside, get some sun on your face. You don't even have to worry about walking. Just do what's the one little thing that you can do.
It'll build.
Yes.
So we've covered the very first 3 about motivation. There's 5 left.
Can we do math?
Sorry, there's 6 left.
There's 6 left.
Okay, all right.
I wasn't actually saying it because I was like, oh, he did that wrong. I was like, okay, wait, think through this. How many do we have left?
Yes, I can do math. Okay. 6 left. We're going to talk about these in the very next session, but I hope you're really thinking about this. And again, please take notes. I think this is one of the most important things, if we understand it well, that will make a difference. And if we're trying to help a friend or a partner or a child, motivation is kind of important, and helping them to follow through and learn this is a great thing. So
so join us next time for the remaining 6 of our key strategies to help with motivation. We'll see you then.
See you then.
Thank you for listening to Two Therapists Talking. We look forward to sharing more conversations with you. Connect with us at twotherapisttalking.com or email podcast@twotherapisttalking.com. If you like what you're hearing, please get on and rate us and subscribe to the podcast.